Let's see which gate we're flying out of today.
Imagine walking into an American airport tomorrow morning and realizing something is missing. No one asks to see your boarding pass. No one reaches for your driver's license. You step towards security, a camera looks at your face, and within seconds, the system knows your name, your flight, and whether you are supposed to be there. You never typed a password. You never touched a scanner. You simply looked forward. And here is what makes this story different. This is not a concept being tested for the distant future. Pieces of it are already operating inside American airports right now. Your face is becoming part of the way you prove who you are when you travel. But that raises a question most passengers never ask. If your face becomes the key that unlocks your journey, who controls the key? Because you can replace a passport, you can reset a phone, you can change a password, but you cannot change your face. And by the time we reach the end of this story, you may never look at an airport camera the same way again. For most of aviation history, proving your identity meant showing something physical. A paper ticket, a passport, a driver's license, a boarding pass. The process was simple. You handed a document to another human being, and that person checked whether the picture and information matched the traveler standing in front of them. But airports became busier. Passenger numbers grew. Security requirements became more complex. And every document check created another place where a line could slow down. Then air travel started moving into the digital world. Printed tickets became electronic. Boarding passes moved onto smartphones. Airlines introduced self-service check-in. Bag tags started printing from machines. Mobile apps began holding reservations, seat assignments, and travel updates. And once more of the journey became digital, the next question was almost inevitable. If the system already knows who is supposed to be traveling, why should a passenger have to keep proving it with a piece of plastic or paper? That question is one reason facial comparison has moved so quickly into airports. But first, something important. When people hear the words facial recognition, they often imagine a giant surveillance system searching millions of strangers and identifying anyone who walks past a camera. That is not always how airport facial comparison works. In many airport systems, the computer already has a reason to expect a specific traveler. The passenger has a reservation. The government or airline has an existing photograph connected to that traveler's identity. The camera captures a new live image. Then the system asks a narrower question. Does the person standing here match the person we expected? Think of it less like searching a city for a stranger and more like checking whether the person at the door matches the photograph already on the guest list. That distinction is important, and it is already changing the way some Americans move through security. TSA pre-check touchless ID is now available at dozens of airports across the United States. Eligible passengers can opt into the program through participating airlines or supported digital identity systems. At the airport, instead of handing over a physical ID in the usual way, the passenger steps forward and allows a camera to capture a live image. The system compares that image with an existing government-held photograph. If the match is confirmed, the traveler can continue. It sounds simple, but there is a massive invisible chain of information behind that 5-second moment. Your reservation exists. Your flight number exists. Your identity information exists. Your passport photograph may already exist in a government database. And if you opted into the right program, the system is prepared before you even reach the checkpoint. That is why the camera can appear to know you almost instantly, but your face is not replacing everything yet. Travelers using touchless ID are still advised to carry acceptable physical identification as a backup. The technology is expanding, but America has not reached a point where every passenger can walk into every airport carrying nothing but a suitcase and a face. Not yet. Before we go any further, if you enjoy discovering the hidden systems working around us every day, subscribe to Iconic Chronicles. And tell us in the comments, would you use facial recognition if it meant moving through the airport faster? Because the security checkpoint is only one part of a much bigger transformation. Think about how many times your identity can be checked during a single journey. At check-in, at bag drop, at security, at the boarding gate, at immigration, at customs. For decades, the travel industry solved this by repeatedly asking passengers to present documents. But biometric travel changes the basic idea. Instead of asking you to prove your identity again and again with an object, the airport can potentially verify the traveler directly. That is already happening in several different forms. TSA also accepts certain digital IDs at a growing number of airports. That can include mobile driver's licenses and identification stored inside supported digital wallets. Digital ID and touchless ID are not exactly the same thing. A digital ID means the document itself is stored electronically. Touchless ID goes further. Your face can become the method that confirms the identity connected to that digital record. And then there is U.S. Customs and Border Protection. This is where the scale becomes much larger. CBP has incorporated facial biometrics into international arrival processing across major American airports and into many international departure operations. For a traveler returning to the United States after a long international flight, the appeal is easy to understand. You may have been traveling for 10 hours. You are tired. Your passport is somewhere inside a bag. A long line is forming. But instead of every passenger spending several minutes presenting documents and waiting while an officer manually confirms the details, facial comparison can automate part of that identity check. At some locations, cameras can capture a traveler's image as they approach. The system compares the live image with photographs already held by the government. If the person is verified, the process can move much faster. If the system cannot confirm the traveler, that person can be sent for the traditional inspection process. That is the promise of the biometric airport. Less fumbling with documents, shorter lines, faster identity checks. Fewer repetitive steps. But the moment the airport becomes easier is also the moment a more difficult question appears. What happens to the image after the camera captures it? That is where the conversation becomes more complicated. Because biometric information is unlike almost every other credential you use. If your credit card number is stolen, the bank can issue another one. If your password leaks, you can create a new password. If your passport expires, you receive a new passport. But if biometric information tied to your face is misused, you cannot simply replace your face. That is why privacy rules matter so much. TSA says participation in its facial comparison processes is voluntary in situations where the program allows passengers to decline. A traveler who does not want to use the camera can ask for the standard identity verification process instead. The agency also says that information collected for many of these identity checks is deleted after verification, according to the rules of the specific program. Touchless ID has its own retention procedures. Customs and Border Protection operates under different rules because its mission is different. And this is one of the most important things to understand about facial technology at airports. There is no single airport camera policy that covers every situation. The camera at a TSA checkpoint may be operated under one set of rules. A CBP camera at international arrivals may operate under another. An airline boarding system may have another policy. An airport authority may be involved in yet another system. So when someone says, "The airport scanned my face," that statement alone does not tell you enough. Who operated the camera? Why was the image captured? How long was it retained? Was participation optional? Was the traveler entering the country, leaving the country, or simply going through security? Was the passenger a U.S. citizen or a foreign visitor? Those details can change the answer. And that complexity is one reason privacy advocates have pushed for clearer information at airports. If facial comparison is voluntary, passengers need to understand that clearly. If data is deleted quickly, people need to know that too. And if different travelers are subject to different requirements, those differences should not be hidden behind a small camera and a rushed airport line. There is also another concern: accuracy. Facial comparison systems are powerful, but no automated identification system is perfect. Lighting can matter. Camera angle can matter. Image quality can matter. a person's appearance can change. Glasses, facial hair, age, injury, or even the quality of an old passport photograph can affect the comparison. Researchers have also spent years studying whether some facial recognition systems perform differently across demographic groups. Modern algorithms have improved dramatically, but the important lesson remains the same. When technology is being used to verify identity, accuracy has to be tested constantly. It cannot simply be assumed. And that is why the human officer has not disappeared. If the machine cannot confirm you, another process still exists. If you decline the camera where participation is optional, another process still exists. For now, automation is not eliminating every human checkpoint. It is changing what the human does. Instead of spending most of the day comparing photographs and names, officers can increasingly focus on the exceptions. The traveler whose information does not match. The person who requires additional screening. The passenger whose documents create a problem. The unusual case. Automation handles repetition. Humans handle uncertainty. But now imagine where that logic could lead. Picture an airport journey 5 or 10 years from now. You walk toward the check-in area. A camera recognizes that a traveler connected to a reservation has arrived. Your booking appears. Your bag tag prints. You place your suitcase on the belt. You continue toward security. Another camera verifies your identity. You pass through screening. At the gate, there is no need to search your phone for a boarding pass. You step forward. The system confirms that the person standing there is the traveler assigned to that seat. The gate opens. You board. On an international return, another camera verifies you for border processing. No repeated document checks, no paper. Almost no friction. The entire journey is connected by one thing you never forgot at home: your face. Pieces of that journey already exist today. But the completely seamless version is still being built. And that distinction matters. It would be misleading to say that every traveler in America can already board a plane with nothing more than facial recognition. They cannot. But look at the individual pieces now moving into place. Mobile boarding passes, digital driver's licenses, automated document readers, touchless TSA lanes, biometric international arrivals, facial comparison at international departures, self-service bag drops, airline identity platforms. One by one, the checkpoints are becoming connected. The airport is not suddenly turning biometric overnight. It is becoming biometric one step at a time, and that may be why so many passengers barely notice. There was no single day when America woke up and paper airline tickets disappeared forever. The change happened slowly. One airline added electronic tickets, then another. Passengers adapted. Eventually, printing a ticket at home started to feel old-fashioned. The same thing happened with mobile boarding passes. At first, holding a glowing phone in front of a scanner felt futuristic. Now people barely think about it. Facial identity may follow the same path. A camera appears at one checkpoint. Then another airport opens a touchless lane. An airline adds biometric boarding. A traveler tries it once. The line moves faster. They use it again. What felt strange becomes convenient. What becomes convenient becomes normal. And what becomes normal eventually becomes almost invisible. That is the part of this story that matters most. The most powerful technology is often not the technology we constantly notice. It is the technology we stop noticing. If facial verification works well enough, the airport of the future may actually feel less technological. You may not constantly pull out your phone. You may not scan a boarding pass 3 times. You may not repeatedly hand documents to different employees. The technology disappears into the background. You simply walk, and the system quietly confirms that you are allowed to keep moving. That sounds efficient, but it also creates one of the biggest questions facing modern travel. How much convenience are we willing to exchange for automatic recognition? There are strong arguments in favor. A face is harder to forget than a physical passport. Automated comparison can make it more difficult for someone to travel using another person's identity documents. Faster processing can reduce airport congestion. Passengers can spend less time standing in lines. Airlines can move people through gates more efficiently. Border officers can focus attention on cases that actually need human judgment. For elderly travelers, families with children, and passengers carrying bags, removing repeated document checks can make the journey noticeably easier. But there are equally serious questions on the other side. How long should biometric information be stored? Who should be allowed to access it? What happens if private companies and government agencies use different standards? How obvious should the opt-out process be? What happens when a machine makes a mistake? Could a system introduced for one narrow purpose eventually expand into another? And perhaps most importantly, will every traveler feel equally comfortable saying no when a camera is directly in front of them and hundreds of passengers are waiting behind? These are not arguments for rejecting the technology. They are questions that should follow any technology powerful enough to identify people automatically. Airports are the perfect place for this debate because they sit at the intersection of convenience and security. Millions of passengers need to be moved quickly. Identity matters, safety matters, time matters, and every delay becomes expensive. That creates enormous pressure to automate. But it also means passengers may accept technologies at airports that they would question much more carefully somewhere else. Think about it. At a coffee shop, you might hesitate before allowing a camera to identify you. At an airport, with a flight leaving in 40 minutes, hesitation becomes much harder. That is why transparency matters. And that is why this story matters beyond the few seconds you may save at airport security today. The traveler should understand what the camera is doing before the line forces the decision. And there is something else psychologically different about facial recognition. When a machine scans a barcode, it is reading an object. When an airport camera scans your face, the object being read is you. That is why the technology can feel more personal than almost any airport innovation that came before it. The boarding pass used to contain your identity. Now your body can help confirm it. And the next generation of airports may be designed around that idea from the beginning. Not terminals where facial technology is an extra feature bolted onto old infrastructure. Terminals where identity verification happens quietly throughout the journey. Is this person scheduled to be here? Has this traveler been verified? Does this passenger belong on this flight? If the answer is yes, the system keeps moving. If the answer is no, a human steps in. That could make air travel dramatically smoother. But it could also make the airport one of the first places where automatic identity becomes a normal part of everyday American life. And once people become comfortable using their faces to move through airports, other industries will be watching. Hotels, stadiums, office buildings, rental car companies, cruise terminals, large events. The airport may not be the end of the story. It may be the training ground. So the next time you walk through an American airport and notice a small camera staring back at you, look closely. It may seem like just another device attached to a checkpoint, but it represents something much bigger. For generations, travelers carried documents to prove who they were. Now technology is moving toward a world where the traveler becomes the document. Your face can confirm your identity. Your identity can unlock your journey. And the airport can recognize permission without constantly inspecting paperwork. Whether that future feels exciting or unsettling depends on one simple question. Who do you trust with the key? For now, passengers still have choices in many of these systems. Physical identification remains important. Touchless programs require eligibility and participation. Traditional verification still exists when technology fails or when travelers decline optional processes. But the direction is difficult to ignore. Paper tickets disappeared. Boarding passes moved onto phones. Driver's licenses are moving into digital wallets. And the next credential entering the airport is something you cannot leave on the kitchen table: your face. So when someone tells you that the airport of the future is coming, remember this: it is not waiting for the future. Parts of it are already here, quietly. One camera, one checkpoint, one passenger at a time. And the real question is no longer whether airports will recognize us. The real question is, what happens when we stop noticing that they do? Would you choose facial recognition if it meant moving through the airport faster, or would you rather keep showing a physical ID? Tell us what you think in the comments. And if you enjoy discovering the hidden technology, systems, and stories operating behind the places we use every day, subscribe to Iconic Chronicles and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the most extraordinary changes in our world do not arrive with a warning. They arrive as convenience, and by the time they feel normal, the future has already begun.